Someone once asked me just how ferocious a queen sacrifice attack on the king could. Let's find out through this game. White advances the e-pawn, and black responds with c5. This is the Sicilian defense. White develops the knight, and black mirrors with a knight of the, pushing the d-pawn, a standard central exchange. Black's knight leaps to the center, while white's knight holds firm in defense. Now black advances the e-pawn and stabilizes the knight. This is the Lasker-Pawn-Variation. White's knight retreats to harass black's king on the flank, while black calmly pushes a pawn, reinforcing the critical squares in front of the king. White's knight seizes an outpost, putting black's knight has nowhere to go. A trade is forced. White recaptures with the pawn. Black's knight is equally out of options and retreats in resignation. White's pawns coordinate in support, with forces active. White prepares a check, but black completes castling first. White doesn't follow up with castling, instead pushing a pawn to undermine black's center. Black ignores it, advances another pawn to anchor the knight, and the knight retreats. Black pushes yet another pawn to prevent white's knight from jumping back into the center. The advanced pawn set up a hidden threat. White's pawn strikes first, yet the pressure bearing down on the position hasn't eased in the slightest. White would do well to wait and reassess before committing. Sure enough, black's central pawn surges forward, forcing white's bishop to retreat. Retreating to e2 was better, it would have kept the kingside covered. Now on c2, the bishop, going to a4 is just wishful thinking. The bishop has no real purpose there, and this is an illusion. Black wants to deliver check, but isn't that a bit wasteful? The correct plan is to play the sixth move and then combine with the queen to launch a direct assault on the king. White's king sidesteps, no real harm done for now. Black's pawns keep pushing, and together with the bishop, they seal off the key lines. White's queen charges forward, trying to eliminate the other black pawn immediately steps up in support, giving white no chance. White's knight swings around to strike the black bishop from behind. If the bishop retreats, white can advance a pawn to close the position and split the board. So the bishop has no choice but to press. White's queen immediately closes in, grabbing at the bishop. The bishop is forced to flee, and in doing so, the idea is clear: sacrifice the bishop to deflect white's queen, then black's queen covers the path as the passed pawn charges straight. This is the moment to strike. White's queen captures the bishop, but black's pawn drives. White's rook doesn't dare block, but if it doesn't, it becomes a sacrifice to the pawn's promotion. White's queen is too far away to help in. It looks desperate, but white's bishop makes one quiet move, and it lands precisely on the critical promotion, while also creating a dominant rook on the black's attack collapses in an instant. Black's pawn shields behind the rook. White's rook calmly captures et. A lone pawn and queen are no longer enough. Black is forced to regroup and redeploy the pieces. The dynamic shifts. Attack. The bishop turns the tight, preparing to coordinate with the queen for a mating attack. Black's knight retreats in time to. White simultaneously advances the pawn. Black's bishop holds firm. White's knight ventures deep into enemy territory, ready to harass or retreat to drive away black's queen if need. Black's knight maneuvers nimbly to avoid being pinned by the rook, which would cut off vitals. Meanwhile, a hidden threat lurks. The knight can jump in with check. The h-pawn is tied down and cannot move. White's king has no choice but on the next move, black's knight can fork, winning the queen. White breaks into a cold sweat and rushes to reach black's rook position just in time, stepping in to take over the defense of the king, while staying ready to support the attack at any moment. Crumbling under the pressure, white gives check to chase away the knight. Black's bishop interposes calmly and steadily. In fact, this bishop move is not ideal, it actually blocks the queen's retreat. If white continues giving check to chase the black's queen is forced back to its own site, and white's knight forks two pieces. White can simply win material. Unfortunately, white's weakness is exposed and instead continues, trying to force the issue, then use the rook to capture and destroy the king's defense. At the critical moment, black finds a brilliant move. The knight leaps in to attack the rook. Now the h-pawn dare not capture the knight, otherwise black's pawn captures, pressing in front of the king, and black's queen delivers a back-rank checkmate. White's rook could have simply stepped aside, safe and sound. But white takes a different path, using the rook to pin black's knight. Black's queen hesitates no more, sacrificing itself to blast open the king's fortress. The long-lurking black rook bursts out like a tiger from its cage, delivering check. White's king retreats into the castle. Black's rook presses forward and checks again. White's king flees outward. Black's rook seizes the moment and delivers the final checkmate.